So the way the questioning works is that I will talk a few minutes, then ask the students a question and give them time to think. It's completely silent in the classroom. I do not want them to talk to each other. I actually want to provide them an opportunity to think, which is not there in a normal lecture. In a lecture, if you start thinking, your mind wanders and you can no longer listen to the information coming in. You either think or you listen. Our brains are not wired to multitask. After that minute or 2 minutes of thinking, I ask them to commit to an answer. This can be done by a multiple choice question, but not necessarily. They could even just write down a little free response answer on a piece of paper. The commitment is essential. I tell them, if after 2 minutes of thinking you don't know what the answer is, it's okay, make it a game, but you have to commit to some kind of an answer. And then I tell them, now turn to your neighbors, find a neighbor who has a different answer, and try to convince that neighbor that your answer is better than his or her answer. So that's when this chaos erupts. They're talking. I let them typically talk for 2-3 minutes. And I walk around, I listen in. I try not to interfere, but just to get a feel for the type of arguments that the students are using. And then I ask them to vote or to commit a second time. And usually you can see a shift of answers towards, in the case that there's a right or wrong answer, more towards the right answer, very pronounced. Or in the case that it's an opinion or interpretation question, usually students tend to converge on a more generally accepted interpretation of the question. And then we wrap the question up, either by having me provide my point of view or by me asking some of the students to provide why they chose a particular answer. So there are 4 things going on here. The first thing is that the students commit. They commit to an answer individually. The second part is that they have to externalize their answer. It's not just something that remains in their head. They have to actually talk to a neighbor and say which answer they chose. And as they do that, they automatically move away from the answer or a fact to the reasoning that leads to that fact or that answer. I chose answer because. So it's the process that becomes important, not just the memorization of an answer. And lastly, they become emotionally invested in the learning process. You find an incredible desire from the students to understand and resolve right then and there in the classroom, rather than telling themselves, I'll jot it down and think about it later, which, as we know, often does not happen.